Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget. This is the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 197th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and alongside of me, co-host J-Raff.
Yeah, it's good to be here again. You know, I know we keep changing these times around a little bit, but kind of do what works on a weekly basis. That's kind of the mode we're in, and it actually works out pretty well. So
yeah,
I'm okay with playing it by a weekly basis, because what works this Sunday might not work next Sunday, but we just like to change it up. We're unpredictable.
That's the life of somewhat new parents. You know, we're hanging out here doing things with our families, and they take priority, as everyone listening, both live and recorded, are well aware of. So we generally had been going in the afternoon. That worked better for us, but today things just worked that later was better. So here we are, an evening edition of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, and this one helps out because now all the games are essentially decided, and really are decided.
And it's kind of nice that I mean I enjoy talking about all the games, but we usually always get hung up on the games that mean the most to us, which is fine. But there's only 4 games, and they all mean a lot because they're playoff games.
Right.
So it's a lot of fun. This week and next weekend are incredible weekends, especially if you want to throw in Monday night. I know it's not professional football, but well, I know it's not called professional football, but there's a lot of future pros playing tomorrow night in the college football national championship game as well, which I see that being more of a Chiefs-Texans game. I could be wrong, but I think that I don't know. I think Alabama's going to have their way with.
You think so?
Not like they did Michigan State, but I think they win by 2 scores.
I'm just tired of seeing Alabama there, and I'm tired of the SEC.
I'm tired of the SEC. I honestly don't even if Alabama could win in isolation from it being an SEC championship, I honestly wouldn't really care, because they have reached the point where I'm just kind of like in awe. You know what I mean? Kind of like the USC teams when we were like coming out of high school and into college there, like those SEC or those USC teams that were just insane, you know, that were blowing teams out in the national championship game. It got to the point where, while I didn't really root for USC, you're just like, oh my God, you have to watch because they were just incredible. Like, that's kind of how I feel about Alabama. It's not the same style, you know, but it's pretty interesting to see how that'll play out. I'm interested to see how Deshaun Watson does against Nick Saban's defense, because, well, we don't need to get into that, but it should be an interesting game.
Well, rounding out,
I think Alabama will take care of business, though.
The college talk: Penn State lost their defensive coordinator, Bob Shoop, took the same position at Tennessee, and James Franklin elevated linebacker coach, and I guess he was actually co-defensive coordinator, Brent Pry, who is actually a Pennsylvania boy as well. He grew up in Altoona. He's been with Franklin for the last 5 years, 2 at Penn State and 3 previous at Vanderbilt. He's familiar. This should help with consistency. We'll see if there are any changes to the rest of the staff, of who else is brought on, if it impacts recruiting at all, which we've seen. Now, not this specific move, but Penn State's lost, I think, 3 or 4 guys already from this class that have been committed to the recruiting class of 2016, and they've lost them. Just this past week, a 4-star defensive tackle decommitted. We've lost, I believe, at least 1, if not 2 defensive backs, and also one of the specialists, I believe, opened their recruitment up over the last 3 to 4 months.
It is getting a little, like, I don't want to say extreme, but they are starting to add up. Some of that comes into play when you start doing I don't want to say new style, but just the next level of recruiting that they're doing now over the last few years. However, they are losing some key guys, so hopefully they can kind of keep building that. We talked about it before the show, winning cures all of that. If they hit 8 or 9 wins next year, I think everything's still moving in the right direction. It won't be easy, based on the schedule. They have some on paper what looks like a decently tough schedule next year. So they'll need to kind of come through. But I said I don't know if it's an issue of me getting the stats to say what I want them to say. I understand the offense, the how inept the offense was at times led to some of this, but in the 7 games they played teams that had a winning record this year. So that doesn't count Indiana, who lost in the bowl game, and so they ended up with 6-7. So I didn't count them. But basically what happened from there was the average score of those, they gave up 31 points in the 7 games they played teams with a winning record. So when you look at that, 31 points, that's not the signs of a great defense. And like at key times, the defense failed this year. I thought when they needed a stop against Northwestern, they failed. There were some times where a stop wins the game and it's right there, and they didn't pull through. And it's not necessarily on the coaching. Like Northwestern, they have the guy in position, he drops an interception, then they give up, the game winner on that drive. Well, that wasn't necessarily on the coaching, but I'm just saying, like, the defense this year was good. And I know statistically in some areas they were really good, but I think they weren't as good as they were the year before. So I just don't know what that means moving forward. I think the defense was more of an unknown this past year than a lot of people think it was. I think people think, it was a great defense. And I think we just saw a lot more of the defense because the offense was terrible. Like, that's basically what I thought. I think it comes down to.
You're right about that. So that's essentially the end of the college football season. Like Justin mentioned just a few minutes ago, the national championship game is tomorrow night. The college football playoff concludes with 1 versus 2 in Clemson and Alabama. And then it is full-on pro football. The college declaration day for underclassmen hoping to enter the draft is this week as well. Then we'll have NFL draft stuff during the lead up to the Super Bowl. Then we'll have signing day. Then you have the combine. Then NFL next season kicks off in March with free agency. And then the draft will be end of April, early May. And then you get into the doldrums where football goes away for most of May and all of June and July.
Then you have the best sports month ever, July.
The worst sports month ever. But finally, at the end of July, training camps will be back, and then it'll be August, and then here we go again. So.
Yeah, that's right. I saw someone today. He was talking about his Steelers fan. He's like, I think I'm going to let my beard grow out until the Steelers lose, basically like a playoff beard for the Steelers. And there's a Dolphins fan sitting there, and I said, you shouldn't shave until the Dolphins lose, because his beard would be ridiculous.
Well, if he would have started that, let's see, mid 2000s, let's just say after 2008, he would have a huge beard right now.
Yeah, that's right.
But also if someone started this. Let's say there was an Eagles fan in the fall of 1961. It was like, you know what? I think I'm not going to shave until the Eagles win a Super Bowl. Well, I guess technically win a Super Bowl then.
They're probably dead.
Till the Eagles win another championship.
They're probably buried with that beard.
He would be in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Futility.
Yeah.
All right, so before we dive into the NFL talk, let's give you the contact information, although I see one of you are already full aware of how to contact us. But we have multiple ways that you can interact with us, and Justin has that information for you.
Yeah, we'd love to have your take on any of the games or kind of developments from this weekend. There's plenty to talk about in lots of different ways for these games this weekend. We'd love to have you call the show. You can use the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. You can also email the show anytime using the Mays Sandwich Shop email inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com.
We also have a multitude of Facebook fan pages and Twitter accounts. On Facebook, you can go to JMNJR Radio or the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. On Twitter, it's at Joe Mays and J-Raff, at JMNJR_radio. Personally, I'm at JMFlyer1454, and Mr. Raffoff here is at Mr._Raffoff. So pretty straightforward for you.
I keep waiting for our New England correspondent to hit us up in the mentions on Twitter.
Oh yeah, we're right. We need a Uncle Rich Twitter. Maybe I'll set one up for him.
They'll be like,
and also I'll just set him up to follow the Patriots, us, and maybe Wilson football account. That's all he really needs, right? That's all.
What more could he ask for?
So, all right. So speaking of the contact information, entering the show when we were setting up, we didn't have an email, but as we were getting ready to roll here, we saw an email come in. So why don't we dive right into the May Sandwich Shop email inbox and talk a little bit about Wild Card Weekend, which is obviously our topic this evening. So, this one comes from, who else? Rich in Massachusetts. Okay, so, here we go. This is Rich. Well, I know where I'll be next weekend, watching my Patriots while the Dolphins and the Ravens and the Eagles will be out playing golf. I only have one comment on this weekend. You can say that all of the visiting teams were victorious, but you cannot say they all won, because we all know that the Steelers and the Seahawks did not win. The Bengals and Vikings lost their games. So I will now predict that all of the home teams will win next week. Have a good show as usual, Rich. So if that's true, then for the conference championship, we'll see New England in Denver and Arizona in Carolina.
Yeah, and honestly, that would be awesome. Like, that's not
the
me
New England
speaking.
part, right?
We'll get into the aspect of rooting interest as we kind of go through some of these, but just in terms of having the ones host the twos in both conferences for Championship Sunday would be really cool from a football fan standpoint. As a fan with personal vendettas against some teams and homerisms rooting against others and all kinds of stuff, I don't know that it would necessarily work out that way, and I don't think that would surprise our listener Rich at all, that I may not feel that way. However, I can't deny that, and I think he would agree. I don't know. Would Rich want
to go to Denver?
To go to Denver, which means he's not going to a game, like physically going, or would he want Pittsburgh to come to New England? Like, I don't know.
Honestly, I think I'd rather, if I'm a Patriots fan right now, looking at who they have to play, I almost feel more confident. Man, that's tough.
See, I don't know.
I think
this
Pittsburgh
weekend you might have changed it.
I think, if everyone's healthy, I think Pittsburgh's the worst matchup.
I agree.
But they don't also... Going to Denver is rather iffy for a lot of teams.
Right.
And, man, that's a tough call. That's a really tough call. So, Rich, if you're listening, we'd like to hear from you. Which would you rather see? Now, we know what he said he thinks going to happen. With the games coming up and how it's going to play out. But who would he rather see? Does he want to see New England go to Denver? Or does he want to see the Steelers go to New England?
I think it's almost like the opposites in those teams, too. Like, I think it comes down to I'm trying to put myself in those shoes where New England's going to score points. Like, despite what happened in Week 17, like, I'm convinced they're going to score points. Now,
are you slighting my Dolphins?
No, I'm just saying they handed the ball off a lot in that game. I don't blame them, but when I look at it, it just becomes one of those things where, do I want to go up against Denver where the defense can be really good? Like, I'm not sold on their defense. Like, their defense is like hit a home. They're like Ryan Howard. They are hit a home run or they are strike out. Like that's basically what the Denver defense is. They've looked incredible and they've looked mediocre. But at the same time, I feel like the Steelers are the opposite. The offense is incredible. The defense, I feel, is mediocre at best. So I think they provide different but potentially both challenging matchups for New England. But you have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, so you have to like your chances regardless of who you play.
Right, even though they finished the season, 2-4, and they look bad at Week 17, they have the injury questions.
I'll believe it when I see it.
In the playoffs, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to them because, look at the history over the last, 15 years.
Exactly what I didn't do to the Packers today. Like, I bought into them struggling, and now some of that might be the fact that they got to play the Redskins, but
Yeah, I don't think this by any means the Packers are back, but this is what I expected.
But in reality, they did look better than they had at any point in the last 2 months. Like they looked. Now here's the thing: I think the Packers are going back to Arizona now,
right? Which they got housed.
Which sets up an interesting thing because I find it hard to believe they would get housed again. But Aaron Rodgers almost died last game. Like it was incredible. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, Rich, when you hear this, even if you don't hear it live, I want to know where you are going to. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer New England to go to Denver, or would you prefer Pittsburgh to come to New England? Okay, so anyway, I think we'll get into that a little bit, the home teams, when we talk about some of the matchups. We'll talk about some of these. Rich alluded to it, and we'll talk about it. The road teams went 4-0. One of the points I put on as we were kind of developing the show here, electronically earlier today. Although all 4 road teams won, I don't know that there was an upset there.
Of the 4, I picked 3 of the 4 road teams, and the only road team I didn't pick was the one that should have lost. Now you could also say that the Steelers should have lost as well. But I picked the Chiefs, Steelers, and Packers to win, which they all did. I also picked the Vikings to win, which they should have won.
Yes, they should.
So I feel as though I'm 4-0. I'm going to take a moral victory on that one.
You do that. See, so, I bought in on the Redskins because I thought the Packers just didn't have it. And I thought the Redskins would win in an uglier game. The Redskins held up their bargain on the ugly part. The Packers just failed to meet them on that.
There are 2 things that I like to look at in the playoffs, and if I look at them, the only game that I didn't go by those rules is the game that I lost. 1, what have you done for me lately in the playoffs? Well, I can't say much about the Chiefs or Texans because neither of them have been in the playoffs all that often, or if they have, they've been pretty futile. I think the Chiefs haven't been in about 5 years. I think they lost to the Ravens in the first round.
They were up huge on the Colts 2 years ago, and then they lost. Andy Reid's first year in Kansas City.
But, I mean, as much as I wanted to see the Texans do well, there was no way I was picking them because I just thought the Chiefs they had won 10 in a row.
Right.
Steelers, Bengals.
In a harder division,
right? Oh, and the second one is what have you done for me lately, or have you played in the playoffs? Do you get the benefit of the doubt? And the other one is take the better quarterback. Well, I'm taking Alex Smith over Brian Hoyer. As much as I like Brian Hoyer, they need an upgrade there, and we'll get to that when we talk about that game a little more. Steelers, Bengals. Andy Dalton wasn't playing. He's having a great year, but he hasn't played now in over a month.
So you took Ben Roethlisberger over A.J. McCarron?
Went with Ben Roethlisberger over A.J. McCarron, and also the Bengals haven't won a playoff game in their last 7 tries, not counting this game, so now it's 8. So Roethlisberger and Steelers, I know the Steelers lost to the Ravens last year, but, I mean, predominantly...
Which was Joe Flacco, and who is also a Super Bowl winner.
I've seen the Steelers win a playoff game in my lifetime. Right. I'm not sure I've literally seen a Bengals team win a playoff game in my lifetime, so I went with the Steelers there. The most recent game that just ended, Packers-Redskins, I haven't seen the Redskins win a playoff game in a long time. I've seen the Packers win a playoff game in a long time, and I'm sorry, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Now, the one that I went astray on, which I should have been right, but man, kickers.
You love kickers.
But when you come down to it, as much as I love Teddy Bridgewater, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback, Russell Wilson is the better quarterback. Yeah. Even if you look at this game, he didn't have a great game. But they ended up still winning, and he was contributed
-6
to that.
Without the windshield. I'll give everyone a pass on not putting up huge numbers in the game.
And also, same thing. The Seahawks have been in the last 2 Super Bowls, so they know how to win in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, I thought I didn't go with my rules there on this one, and I thought I was going to get lucky.
That when
so if I would have stuck with always going by those rules, they're kind of more of guidelines than rules, so that's why I didn't stick to it all the way.
Which is why they don't work.
Right.
No, I have the same thing. Like I use the things and then I go against it and it comes back to bite me. So
yeah. So but anyways, let's start with the first game from yesterday, which was the evening game in Houston. Kansas City traveling to the Texans. Kansas City was actually the 5 seed despite winning their last 10 and going 11-5. They had to travel to the AFC South Division champs, the Houston Texans. And it was not pretty.
No. They literally ran back the opening kickoff 106 yards for a touchdown.
It started like that, and they could have not stopped scoring there.
Right. And then I think they kicked 2 field goals in the second quarter. So it's 13-0. You're like, man, the Texans could get a break
but
here.
One touchdown, like we saw
Right.
Seahawks-Vikings, one
Right.
touchdown changes things.
And then they get a
didn't
touchdown in the third quarter. So now all of a sudden,
Uh-oh.
you're like, it's 20-0, and the Texans can't do anything. And Brian Hoyer is throwing to guys in the wrong color jersey over and over and over again. And then the Chiefs get 10 more in the fourth quarter and end up winning 30-0. And honestly, in the second half, I don't know that it was that close. Like it was bad. Brian Hoyer probably played himself out of having a chance to return as the starter, even though he's not necessarily the long-term solution there. I think he played himself out here. It kind of came full circle because he played like this in week 1 and got pulled for Ryan Mallett. And then O'Brien said I probably hung on to him too long, or I probably pulled him too quick in week 1. I think Hoyer's stat line.
He had 4 interceptions.
15 of 34.
So less than 50% completion percentage.
136 yards for 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Yeah, and I think he had 2 fumbles. One that they recovered, but I think he had a fumble that they didn't recover as well.
And the Chiefs' stats don't stand out to you because Alex Smith didn't hit 200 yards, although he was efficient.
17 of 22.
He had 1 pick, 1 touchdown, and rushers. No rushers rushed for 70 more yards.
No.
But when you have special teams scoring and your defense playing like that, you're going to beat a lot of teams in this league. Yeah. So 30-0, Chiefs over Texans. I think that was expected. Like, of all the games this weekend, I thought that was the easiest one to pick. You know, as much as I didn't want to doubt the Texans.
I honestly thought the Steelers was easier, even though it probably shouldn't have been. But I thought
because of the rivalry aspect, even though they had McCarron, I thought that was going to be exactly the way we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. But yeah, Chiefs-Texans. I would have liked to see the Texans put up a little bit more resistance, make it a little bit more respectable, but the Chiefs have just been playing so well.
Brian Hoyer did have 2 fumbles, 1 that they recovered, but 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles.
That's not going to win you too many games.
That's a bad game.
Yeah, that's not going to win you too many games.
Yeah, so not the way they wanted to start it off. And then we went to, we go to kind of the extreme opposite here. It was a miserable weather in Cincinnati. It was raining. It's cold. I think that's among the worst when it's like 40 degrees and raining.
Yeah.
That's like the worst weather. Yeah, it would be better if it's 10 degrees colder and snowing at that point, to me. And like you kind of referred to it, it's a rivalry game that got out of control less than a month ago.
Well, I was going to say, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks ago? We saw the same thing happen when the Steelers... That's the game that Dalton got injured, right?
Yeah.
So Dalton got injured in that game. So the Steelers again taking out a Bengals quarterback. And by taking out, I don't mean that they literally were like
he threw a pick and tried to tackle him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these things happen. But Bengals go on, hold on, win the division. Steelers sneak in at the 6th seed because the Jets choked. And here we are, Steelers Bengals again. McCarron, and then for part of the game we actually saw Landry Jones because Ben Roethlisberger got hurt.
And they actually gave. Like, they went the baseball style here and gave both teams warnings, essentially, before the game starts.
Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't happen in football. Like, they call
it a no-fly zone in pregame warm-ups.
Yeah.
They didn't want people getting close to each other.
Right.
Well, because you have
Steelers talking
about... Yeah, Steelers talking about how they don't like, the Bengals and Bengals calling out certain Steelers and stuff. Like, they don't like each other.
Right.
And, this... It got really bad back a decade ago with Carson Palmer when Kima von Oelhoffen rolled into Palmer towards ACL, and that kind of ended the little mini surge the Bengals had because then Carson Palmer ended up leaving. They had a couple down years, but then they ended up Dalton and AJ Green, things started to come together. Now the Bengals have been in the playoffs now for what? How many straight years now? 5 straight years.
Yeah.
Now they haven't won a single one of those.
Yeah.
But they've been in the playoffs 5 straight years. So we get to this game. The first half wasn't that bad in terms of the chippiness to talk about. It was sloppy. It was poorly played. Great defensive efforts, big hits, swarming to the ball. Defenses look good, but the offenses couldn't do anything. And now I know the Steelers are down to their 4th and 5th string running backs, but
I think they at one point in the third quarter, I think they had like 159 rushing.
Oh yeah, the rushing game was not the problem yesterday, not at all.
They couldn't. They were struggling to get their guys open against the Bengals, which the Bengals secondary can be solid, especially if they're getting a pass rush up front, which they were. But yeah, in the second half, so the Steelers were the only one that scored, because at halftime, I remember reading the tweet, somebody's like, I've watched 5 hours of football today and only... Or, no, sorry. The Steelers didn't score till the second quarter, I think. It was
You're
nothing.
Right. Yeah, it was.
And somebody tweeted at one point, I've watched 5 hours of football today and only one team has scored. Because Houston did not score their entire game, and the Steelers and Bengals did not score in the first quarter. Now, the Steelers did score in the second quarter, and they started, it looked like, I think they were up 15-0. And
they went up 9-0. Then they scored, right, but didn't get the 2 points. So they were up 15.
So they're up 15-0, and at that point, I said to my wife, a Steelers fan, I don't know that the Bengals can overcome this. Like, could they score 16 points? Yes. Are they going to hold the Steelers to 15 when they and score the 16? I'm like, no.
Well,
and
I mean,
it almost happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, they can, right, sort of.
Maybe. She went to sleep.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I went to bed and ended up getting up a little bit later and catching the end of the game.
Right.
But it wasn't just... So I went to bed when it was... I think it had just become 15-7. Or was it 15-6? Well, I forget. Did they get 6? They kicked it.
Right.
So it was 15-7. I think that's when I went to sleep.
Okay.
So when I woke up later... AJ Green had just scored the touchdown to put them up 16-15.
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And now a couple of things had already happened. The big one that kind of started things downhill was Ryan Shazier uncorking on Giovanni Bernard. Now a couple of things came up about this. First, the defenseless part of it, because per the NFL rules, and this was explained by the those officials that they bring in to talk about it, once he kind of make the old school, he didn't say this, but to me it was basically a football move, right, where he turned to face the defender. He's no longer considered defenseless.
Right.
So that wasn't going to draw a flag for that part of it. You're not going to tell the defender, you got to wait till he's ready to hit him.
Right.
That was not going to draw a flag. The problem that most people had was that he hit part of the helmet.
Right.
And he lowered his head to do it.
And he launched himself and he lowered his head so that his crown of the helmet.
So it's almost like spearing.
Right. And I heard another guy, not the guy that was on the broadcast on CBS, say it was spearing. They didn't call it, but it was spearing. It's not hitting the defenseless receiver.
Right.
He made it clear. It wasn't, because he had become the runner by the rule, which also, in turn, meant he had possession of the ball and it was a fumble.
Right.
But okay, so he caught the ball, turns, has possession, fumbles because he got knocked out.
He was literally unconscious.
Right.
So you could see when he was falling, he just went limp.
One of the things that I did not know happened, honestly, I didn't know it until this morning, that while they're tending to Giovanni Bernard, Shazier and another Pittsburgh linebacker are dancing on the 50-yard line on the Bengals symbol, celebrating.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I did not know that till this morning.
I saw them celebrating the touchdown, which didn't end up being a touchdown.
Right. What I saw was them on the back at midfield dancing and kind of celebrating. Did not go over well.
No, well, I would think.
Right. And then you start it goes on. Actually, there was something in the first half. Mike Munchak got into it with
Reggie Nelson.
Yeah, Reggie Nelson pulled his hair, pushed him, all that stuff. Got a flag. Oh man.
Yeah, it's just stuff you don't see every day.
Right.
Coaches and players involved.
And to sum it up, we haven't gotten to all this stuff yet. But to sum it up, when somebody goes, when Mike Munchak, an assistant coach for the Steelers, pulling the hair and getting into it with a player on the other team
is overlooked,
is the 12th craziest thing to happen in the game.
It was
that
a crazy
tells you how the game goes.
Yeah, well, things started to get hot after that Ryan Shazier unloading on Giovanni Bernard. It should have been flagged to me. I think it should have been flagged. Not for the defenseless part, but because of the spearing aspect of it.
That is the play that the NFL needs to get rid of. That. Not the brushing the quarterback's face mask or helmet or any hard hit on the quarterback. That's not what needs to be taken out. What needs to be taken out is just drilling the guy in the helmet with your helmet when he had no chance.
The issue you have with this is that you see this, you probably see it over-exaggerated in college football.
Yeah.
Under-enforced in the NFL.
In college football, he's thrown out.
College football,
he's out of the game.
I think at least once a week we hear someone getting thrown out for they
easy.
call it what, targeting?
Targeting. And they can review it, but they still like get penalized. I think they might have changed that, but like people are getting ejected who shouldn't in college.
If this was in college, Ryan Shazier would have been gone.
I think it might have been Ross Tucker that sent the tweet out. Like he's like, it's an unacceptable standard for the NFL that it is. And it's funny because in this case it didn't actually go that way. But in the NFL, the standard for this rule basically is when in doubt, call it. He's like, you can't have it that way. And that's basically what it's become. They're asking officials on a lot of these calls to call what you think you saw. I know a lot of officials who will always say, like, you can't call what you don't see. You can only call the things that you actually see. Whether you think it's happening, you can't call it on that. You can't say, oh, well, I thought he was holding him. That's not going to hold up. If you see him holding, you throw the flag for holding.
Right.
Now, they didn't call the defense's receiver, which is what Ross Tucker was talking about there. But there's no doubt in my mind. Right, no, and it wasn't. But there's no doubt in my mind that that's the type of play. And everybody's talking, well, you can't get it out of the box. He wasn't running inside the tackles. This wasn't in the line and, this was out in space. And there was, like, he could have very easily just put it in his chest, like, even with his helmet or his shoulder, in his chest, and he still probably needs trainer's attention because he was getting leveled either way, but he's not unconscious.
What made it so egregious was that, and this is bad for Shazier too, he lowered his head.
Right.
Like, he literally hit him with the top of his helmet right into the face mask and ear hole and came up shoulder pad and, like, up into that.
It's not just bad for what happens to the person who's getting hit.
Shazier could have been paralyzed.
That's dangerous for the person who's hitting.
Like, we teach that, I talk about my middle school coaching all the time. Like, one of the things like, if you're looking at the ground, well, one, not only are you probably not going to make the tackle, you're going to hurt yourself.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing you have to avoid.
You got to see where you're tackling.
So, that's what started all this. So then I think it might have been...
Which also plays into a big factor that a lot of people are missing later on, but I'll come back to that when we get there.
Now, I don't remember exactly the chain of events, but...
So, the Steelers do nothing with Landry Jones. Nothing. It's 16-15.
Wait, we didn't get to Roethlisberger getting hurt.
Okay.
I couldn't remember if the Steelers recovered the fumble from Bernard, but I can't remember if they kicked a field goal on that drive or if they scored a touchdown.
I think, no, because they were stuck at 15. So they're stuck at 15.
All right, well, then Roethlisberger hit Martavis Bryant on an incredible catch, which I know people, and probably by the rule of football, that probably shouldn't have been ruled a catch. But I love that it was, because to me, that was a catch.
Right.
So... You've probably seen the highlight by now. It's incredible. An awesome catch. And for a second, let's just remember this. With Clemson playing in the college football playoff, a few years ago, Clemson's wide receiver core was DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, and Martavis Bryant.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Right. That's insane.
Now, obviously, they all are at different points in their collegiate career, but they were all on the roster at Clemson at one time. So, Pittsburgh was up 15-0. Well, on one of these plays deep in Pittsburgh territory, Vontaze Burfict, who's one of the guys that kind of has been riled up, said he hated the Steelers.
Public enemy number one for the Steelers.
He makes a good legal hit on Roethlisberger, takes him to the turf. He falls on his shoulder, and like I said last night, he looked like he got Romo'd.
So, yeah, one of the things I did see today, and again, it could be angles and edits making it look worse than it was.
Perfect, like kicking the shoulder.
It did look like he kicked the shoulder as he's getting up. Now, what the video I saw, it was a Vine, and it cut off as like right after he made the contact. Too. So I literally could not tell because he did rip the ball up and walk over him, or was he just giving him the shot?
I feel
and part of me wants to believe, he was just getting over it.
Right, but however, because you can't give him the benefit of the doubt.
No, he has lost that.
I feel like it would have been worse. I feel like if it was that much intent or it made a difference, Ben would have said something.
Right.
Like, I feel like if it...
Or, got up in his face, at that point.
Been like, what are you doing?
Right.
With a lot more colorful
or
language,
shove him
I'm
or
sure.
something.
So, Roethlisberger looks like he may have broken his collarbone. That's what my first thought was.
I thought
he broke his collarbone.
That's what I thought.
So he gets up, walks off the field. Landry Jones comes in. They cart Ben off. Bengals fans throwing beer at him.
Yeah. But my only thought to that, and you know probably where I'm going with
this. If this happened in Philadelphia,
the world would have ended. That would have been the lead story. Not who won the games, not who lost the games. That would have been the lead story as Philadelphia fans go crazy.
So Ben leaves.
Instead, the headline is probably Philadelphia fans were at Steelers-Bengals game.
Yeah. Philly fans throw beer at Bengals-Steelers game. Landry Jones comes in. The Steelers do nothing. The Bengals start to fight back. They get all these points and whatnot. They make the game interesting. They take the lead. Ben decides to come back in. And things start to get interesting because Jeremy Hill fumbles.
Well, so on Landry Jones' last possession, there's like a minute and 40 seconds left or something like that. He throws a pick.
Ah, yes.
And the Bengals are at the edge of field goal range already. They run first down. So a pick by Landry Jones. First down. Jeremy Hill, who has fumbling problems, but is in the game because Giovanni Bernard probably still doesn't remember where he is.
Concussed.
Right. So the hands guy on offense is out because he got knocked out on what should have been a flag earlier. Now, Jeremy Hill, all he has to do is protect the ball, get 6 yards, gets the ball ripped out, and fumbles. And at that point, that's when I use this line with our friend Adam, because we told him, I've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
You knew at that point. Now, that's some of me being the pessimist here.
But it works so well.
I knew at that point. I knew, honestly, because when Ben went out, I think I texted you. I don't know. I might have texted someone else. It might have been the college friends. More Big Ben injury drama or something like that.
No, you did send that to me.
Because, look, he is tough. But there's nobody that gets hurt more than Ben Roethlisberger. Like, seriously, he's hurt all the time. And they're like, they're hoping he can play. There is no way he doesn't play next week. None. Not a chance.
The reports now are they think he has a dislocated shoulder.
I still don't care. If he can throw the ball 5 yards, which is all he really threw in the last drive, he's going to play next week. There's no doubt in my mind. However,
that's not going to get it done.
Right. So now Ben comes in. So he sat out a couple possessions, which at that point you're like, well, if he could go. Because that one possession, they were down. Like the possession where Landry Jones threw the pick, they were down. So you're like, with under 2 minutes. So you figured that has to be it. He can't go. Well, he comes in, throws nothing like past the line of scrimmage.
They're slowly moving down, but they're running out of time.
And they used their last timeout with 18 seconds or with 25 seconds left or something. And they're still, it would be a 65-yard field goal at this point.
So then there's a play over the middle. I don't know, 10 to 15 yards. I can't remember.
The best description I heard was it basically looked like a play out of the longest yard.
Right.
And honestly, it really did.
Roethlisberger threw a ball towards Antonio Brown, who was coming across the middle. And he had a defender on him. I don't think he was going to be able to catch the pass. He was moving from right to left with a defender on his inside hip. And Vontaze Burfict came in and he targeted the head.
Shoulder and helmet.
To Antonio Brown's helmet.
He looked like a crash test dummy, the way his head snapped around. Like it was.
And he spun with his arms out and everything.
Yeah.
So right there was a huge penalty.
15 yards. So
all
of a sudden now it's like a 50-yard field goal, roughly.
And the teams are now they're going
right.
at each other.
Yeah, the benches are.
They essentially see it as payback for what Shazier did to Bernard, which to me there was no intent there. No. It was a stupid play. It should have been flagged, but he wasn't trying to do that.
Right.
Burfict was trying to do that.
Yeah, and he didn't have to.
Right.
Like Shazier was the only guy out there. He had to make the tackle on Bernard, or Bernard gets probably like 30, 40 yards.
Now, Vontaze Burfict has been here before. He's done a lot of questionable things. He's been fined a lot.
Knocked Le'Veon Bell out.
He's not the smartest
person.
person.
Cheered about it.
He was essentially kicked off the Arizona State squad. He has second-round talent. He went undrafted for a reason, folks.
Right.
And it's one of that and Adam Jones, who we'll get to in a second, is one of the reasons that people are at time at least knee-jerk reaction following the actions during the game were saying that Marvin Lewis should be fired.
Right.
So now, like you said, now it's a 50-yard field. It's still long, and in those conditions,
in the
tough.
rain,
Well, the teams are going at each other. Joey Porter, a coach of the Steelers, is out on the field amongst a bunch of Bengals.
Who are yelling at the officials to get Joey Porter off the field.
Yeah.
Legitimately. Because
Right,
Joey Porter's going to get fined for
right,
being
he's
on the
not
field.
allowed to be out there. But Adam Pac-Man
Loses
Jones
his mind.
gets a personal foul as a result,
Yeah.
moving it up another 15 yards.
And becomes a 35-yard
field goal. So 30 yards of penalties without any time going off the clock, changing it from a 60-some yarder to a 35-yarder. And like you said, we've seen this story before.
Right.
The Steelers, who have had kicking problems all year, now
Right.
most of it was at the
Right.
beginning, and we've seen kickers miss kicks today alone. But Chris Boswell, 35-yard field goal, good. Steelers win 18-16, and people on Twitter and on Facebook
Were
and watching the game,
their
people were
minds.
losing their mind.
I saw this. Somebody goes, this tells you the state of this loss. Is it better to be a Browns fan or a Bengals
Well,
fan?
yeah, and I saw Browns fans in saying, you can throw that out there all you want because the Cleveland sports thing is a crap show.
Right.
But the Browns have won a playoff game more recently than the
That's
Bengals.
true.
They were pointing that out.
And honestly, it's better to be the Browns. That's gut-wrenching, the way the Bengals lost.
So the Bengals have now lost 8 consecutive playoff games.
The Bengals have come out, and at least sources say that Marvin Lewis is
7 of
safe.
those 8 are with Marvin Lewis.
Right. They say Marvin Lewis is safe. Now,
Well, he had a built-in excuse going into this playoff
Right.
season because Andy Dalton
Right.
wasn't there. But then with
The
the
way
way
they
they didn't
lost.
have the Bengals under control, a lot of people were saying that goes to the head coach, the coaching staff. That's on them.
right. Now, I did see, and I feel like this is a fair point. And it's kind of 2 points here. First of all, Mike Brown, I think it's Mike.
Yes.
But Mike Brown is the owner and GM. He's the guy that brings these guys in. A lot of people said that when they brought them in, Marvin Lewis didn't want Pac-Man. He didn't want Vontaze Burfict. But he has no choice and no say. Okay, you're the coach. You do the day-to-day stuff. That's fine.
You still have to control
The
them.
other part is, he goes, who exactly? So you're telling me these guys are on the team, which I get. Who exactly does control Pac-Man and Vontaze? They're like, name anyone. They're like, it's not going to end well. They would get cut from other teams because of the way coaches would be trying to, if he's playing in New England and gets benched, right? He's going to get cut. Belichick's going to cut him. But that's not the situation here because the guy who brings him in is the owner. And the owner's saying, no, we need this guy. You make it work. And I also understand, you're not going to take Burfict out. He had the pick on Landry Jones. He's your best defensive player. You're not going to be like, oh, we're not going to play.
He literally ran that football back to his locker room.
We're going to play.
And then someone said, ironically, if he would have stayed there, they might have won the game.
Yes, yeah. And it's not like he's telling them. It's not like he's even just being passive on it. Marvin Lewis is telling these guys, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. But we all know people who it doesn't matter what you tell them. It does not matter. They're going to lose their cool. And we all know people. I say that. We've both played team sports where there's somebody where it's like, man, I just hope they don't get in that guy's head because as good as he is, he's a mental midget. That's the word we use now kind of as coaches. Mental midgets.
Oh, you can circle the games on the schedule.
And there are mental midgets, and yeah, I won't say them right now, but guys I played with in high school and some things, you just knew that come certain times it wasn't going to get done. Or if I had to bet, they were going to fold under the pressure, and by fold I mean lose their cool or not make the
right.
play they need to make, stuff like that. So it's just one of those things where Bengals found a way to hand the game. To refer back to Rich's email, they handed the game to the Steelers. However, the Steelers, Roethlisberger's hurt. Antonio Brown was knocked out. Has concussion protocol. I don't know. When is that Denver game going to be? Has that been released yet?
Yeah, they were announced. I have it written down here.
Because that could be huge if the Denver game is Saturday instead of Sunday. I don't know.
The Steelers-Broncos game is the last game.
Is the last game on Sunday.
Sunday evening.
See, that's a big... That's one day could be the difference for whether Antonio Brown can play or not. I think if Antonio Brown is out and Ben is hurt, they could be in trouble. But again, we're going to see the Broncos defense. What Broncos defense are we going to see? The league's best defense, or the team that like only puts up statistically good but struggles when it matters at times down the stretch? I don't know. We're going to have to see, because I'll believe Ben is hurt when he plays like crap, which I just don't. Again, I've seen this movie. How many times has Ben been hurt and comes back and it looked like he tore his ACL earlier this year.
Yeah, it did.
And he missed 2 weeks. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. And that sounds like a knock, but I mean, he's a great quarterback. But I'm just saying, like, there's always drama around his injuries. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. So they're going to take on Denver, and I really don't know how I feel about that.
The game got out of control, and people want to play the blame game. Is it on Marvin Lewis? Should he be fired? I don't believe that. Right. Was it on the refs? This is a tightrope they walked. They were throwing flags. They're saying, well, they should have been ejected. There should have been a flag. There should have been a flag on Joey Porter. On the Bernard hit.
Right.
But, they want to say, well, you should have thrown these people out.
When was the last time you saw a spearing penalty, though?
And how often do NFL players get kicked out of games?
Right. Unless you throw a punch.
Right.
Well, Odell Beckham threw punches and didn't get thrown out.
So, it's just such a tight, and I don't want to blame either of them. No. Well, do you know who there is to blame? The players.
Vontez Burfict.
Right.
And Pac-Man Jones.
How about you don't act like mental midgets?
Right.
Okay? And this is one thing I wanted to touch on, because I had gotten a text from my dad, but now he actually joins us on the May Sandwich Shop hotline.
All right.
So we're going to welcome in Bill from Sinking Spring. I'm sure he's calling about the Steelers-Bengals game. So what do you have for us?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good.
I have to say that, the other three games, other than the Steelers game, I enjoy watching football. I did not enjoy the Steelers games, especially towards the end, because I just think it gives the whole NFL a black eye. And I really feel I don't blame the officiating. I thought they tried their best to keep that game under control. And because everybody knew what was going to happen, because they had them at the midfield before the game even started and everything. But I really feel that the NFL needs to come down with this. You could do some of these hits like these guys get. There's no just a 15-yard penalty. They are ejected. And if it means missing the next game, so be it. Because, it's just one of the reasons I'm not a big baseball fan is I don't agree with, okay, you hit our guy, so we're going to beam you the next time in the head. I don't agree with this stuff. Let's play the game of football. This trying to hurt somebody else to take them out is baloney, if you want to use that word for it. But I just, it just got out of hand, and to hurt people like that, it just makes no sense to me at all. So I'll get off, and you can maybe agree, disagree, or whatever. But I just think
I hung up on him. That was my fault.
The hostile takeover has begun.
Right, I hit the wrong button. So sorry for cutting him a little short. But I completely agree with him. It's a turnoff.
The only way I feel it was mishandled on the officiating end is the administration of it. How does Dean Blandino or whoever makes the call send the same referee who worked the game less than a month ago that got out of control? Now, I know it's an all-star crew.
Right, it's a conglomerate.
But how do you send that guy right back into this situation?
Who had issues before.
Right. Now, I know they were kind of blindsided with it last time, which they shouldn't have been because the tweets in public, it was, public
well, they
stuff
should have
all over
definitely
again.
known this time.
Right, and they did because they had, but how do they not send a different crew there? I don't get that. But again, I think we said it, and I think Bill kind of alluded to it. We agree. It's on the players. Now, I don't agree that they should that you have the automatic ejections, because I feel that's where college has gone wrong with a lot of this stuff is the automatic ejection. I
think the way to do that is almost like if you get flagged for hits on a defenseless receiver, spearing, any of those egregious ones.
I think that has to be.
You get flagged once, and then the rest of the year you do it again.
Well, see, I think every one of those needs to be a reviewable play, not like coach's challenge play. Like they need to be watching it and
if you're going to throw
reviewing
someone out because of their actions, not the easy ones, the punches and stuff like that. But if you have someone
which they are allowed to review,
if you have someone who is targeting for the second time.
Right.
And you have to throw him out. You should take the 30 seconds to walk over and make sure that you get it right.
To me, the way I think you get it done is you start having significant fines for players, coaches, and owners.
Right. Make everyone
At that
accountable.
point, when you start fining Mike Brown,
the entire organization.
he's not signing Vontez Burfict.
Right.
He's not signing Pac-Man Jones. By the way, when you come down to it, the irony of guys who have made, it's not irony, but guys who have made incredibly questionable decisions repeatedly make poor decisions that cost your team a game. Pac-Man, to the counts that I know, is long removed from those, that level of poor decision making that he had early in his career that almost ended his career. But the pattern is still there. You can't just change all of that, and they folded. They folded under the pressure.
Yep.
I just, it's unfortunate. I don't think Marvin Lewis should lose his job, and it doesn't look like he will. It'll be interesting to see because both the coaching, the coordinators there could get head coaching jobs somewhere else.
Right, yeah. Hugh Jackson is supposedly the front runner for the 49ers job, and the defensive coordinator, I'm not going to remember his name.
It looks like just a regular average guy.
No, I can't remember his name, of course.
But anyway.
Yeah, they're both up for jobs and could very well get the jobs. So we spent a lot of time talking Bengals Steelers. We spent the whole show talking about that. So a quick rundown here to wrap things up for the wildcard weekend. The 6-City Seahawks went to the NFC North champion Vikings, and it was very cold. It was, I think, like -4 at kickoff. It dropped to -6.
Like the former Vikings coach walk out for the kickoff in a polo shirt?
Yeah, he's good to go.
Somebody goes, I'm not sure he was trying to show how tough he was with walking out there, but it's like, but that's what he did.
Yeah. There was no offense for essentially the entire game. The final score was 10-9 Seahawks, and it all comes down to an immense choke by Blair Walsh, who had hit 3 and was perfect. I mean, I think literally the one that put them up 9-0, the commentator said that it was a perfect field goal. And it was. It was like a 43-yarder. It was right down the middle.
Yeah.
No issues whatsoever. And I know they started making a big deal about the laces all the time. When you're that closer than extra point length.
If he would have missed one of the long ones, okay. And Blair Walsh owned it, and I feel awful for him.
Well, and the team backed him up, too.
Right. I feel bad for him.
We win and lose as a team.
Right. And, some people were making a big deal out of the coach saying, like, no, he's got to make that. It's a chip shot.
Well, yeah, he does.
That's the truth. Like that doesn't change.
Literally, what he's being paid
that doesn't change the fact that we win and lose as a team.
We
but
still support him.
The coach will also say Adrian Peterson has to hold on to the ball and not fumble. I know he fumbled once. Did he fumble twice?
I don't think so.
Okay, I was listening on the radio and then I saw it on TV. So it was a little disjointed for me that game. So I know he fumbled once, but that set up. That was at a key time. For the Seahawks. So again, Seahawks doing it again, and honestly, even when they weren't looking good at halftime, they looked like they didn't have a shot last year in the NFC Championship game and came back and won in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, wow.
So Seahawks are kind of, I'm going to believe it when I see it. So interesting thing, Seahawks, they play Carolina next week. And I don't know if that's Saturday. Or
no,
Sunday.
It's Sunday. It's the early Sunday game.
So they play on Sunday. Do they go back west and then come east again, or do they? I don't know. I think technically, I don't know if they're east or west of the Mississippi. I thought that's how Pete Carroll made his decision, because if they're east of the Mississippi, he stays. If they're west, they don't.
I think they're west.
Right. I think it's just west because it's like on the Mississippi.
Right.
But we'll have to wait and see. That's a lot of travel for them. And this is one of those taxing ones. You stand out for 4 hours in minus 25 with wind chill. That takes a toll. Yeah. Less of a toll when you win, though.
Yes. So Packers, Redskins, a 5 seed against a 4 seed. The Redskins won the NFC East. The Packers were the best wild card team. This one went as I expected because I wasn't impressed by the Redskins.
Doesn't it surprise me at all? But I just didn't think the Packers were good enough to win it.
But like I said at the top of the show, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
Who's the better quarterback? Packers got it done relatively easily.
No.
So they're going to move on. And you made a note here. Do road team wins, are they upsets? Because we saw all the road team wins.
And honestly, I don't think they were. I know the Packers were a 1-point favorite.
And when you look at the line, you can tell things too. But I mean, I look at it, just because you won the division doesn't mean you're better than some of the wild card teams.
Especially the teams that won, like Kansas City won a ton. Like like this week, I don't think road teams winning is necessarily an upset. In as a matter of fact, I would say for some of the games, like the Redskins winning would still have been an upset because I don't know. Even though I picked them, I don't think they were necessarily as good as the Packers, especially looking back at it now.
Upset to me is who do I think is the better team, and am I surprised they lost? The only
and this weekend you're not going to get those matchups.
I'm not surprised with any of the ones that lost.
If 4 road teams win next weekend, it's the first time it ever happened. This in Wild Card Weekend. I assume it would be the first time it happens next weekend as well if all the road teams won. Yeah. If you had both ones and both twos lose. That can't have happened before.
Right.
Like,
so we already lost 4 division champions are gone. Now we knew it was more than likely that the 4 seeds in each conference because they were definitely the weakest.
Honestly,
of the bunch.
It sets up better next games, I think.
But you're probably right. So we have the 5th-seeded Chiefs going to the 2-seeded Patriots next week. Injuries are a big one in that one. The Chiefs lost wide receiver Jeremy Maclin, although it was only a high ankle sprain. It was not a knee tear. His status is up in the air. The Patriots, we know Edelman and a lot of their linemen are expected back. They've really struggled the last few weeks of the season. They lost their final 2 and 4 of their last 6. They looked out of it on offense. They haven't gotten defensive stands when they need it. So Chiefs at Patriots is the first game Saturday evening up in Foxborough. Then the NFC game that night is the 5th-seeded Packers at the 2nd-seeded Cardinals. And they just met in Week 16. And as Justin mentioned, Arizona absolutely crushed the Packers 38-8.
And it wasn't that close, and I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to die.
Arizona was all over them, so I don't know.
Here's the thing, though. I feel like that's too obvious of a pick going into this one now. You know, like I feel like just they crushed them. The Packers can't get crushed twice, but that doesn't mean they win. Like I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what to think.
And I think the great parallel is the Vikings-Seahawks game. The Seahawks crushed the Vikings, 5 weeks ago, was it? A month ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like 30-3 or something like that. They beat them. It was 20-0 at halftime. They won 34-3 or whatever it was. And look at this one. Minnesota probably should have won this game. They lost by a point. So I think, I don't want to get into predictions, but I'm just off the top of my head. I'm thinking Green Bay.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout, right? I don't think it's going to be.
I'd still favor the Cardinals.
Yeah.
All right, then the next day we have the 6-1 games. First one at 1:00 is going to be Seahawks at Panthers.
All right, Panthers. Let's see what you got.
Panthers won the regular season game in Seattle way back in Week 6, 27-23.
When people started to say, "Huh."
Yeah, maybe the Panthers are for real.
What people at the time started saying was, "Oh, the Seahawks don't have it this year." They finally
because I think this dropped them to possibly 2-5 or 2-4.
Yeah.
But neither team could cover the tight end, so that's one interesting thing to watch next week. Now, Jimmy Graham is out for Seattle, so will Luke Wilson be able to play, or how will Seattle do it? They've kind of been favoring Doug Baldwin, but maybe that plays into Carolina's strength. We've seen what their corners have been able to do to some of the big-name receivers. But Greg Olsen is still there for Carolina. Can Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, the Legion of Boom, what are they going to do in the rematch with them in Carolina?
Cam Chancellor got burned today on back-to-back plays, essentially.
He also got a big
should have cost
pass
them the game.
interference call too. Then the last game is 6-seed Steelers at 1-seed Broncos. The biggest thing is our Big Ben Antonio Brown going to play for the Steelers?
Right.
We saw the Steelers win just a few weeks back in Pittsburgh in a crazy game. Pittsburgh scored the final 21 points, 14 of them in the fourth quarter to get the win. Neither team could get any of the running game going, but both teams had big passing games. Osweiler threw for almost 303. Roethlisberger threw for almost 403. And the biggest thing is Osweiler's not getting the start.
Right.
Peyton Manning coming off the bench last week to get the win. Now he's going to start in the playoffs in the divisional round.
Before we can see it and say what happens, in hindsight, that's the move you have to do. The Broncos are a veteran team. They're in win now. You have to go with Peyton Manning. You have to. Like, I know people are like, he never gets it done in the playoffs.
People will not.
That's not true. He won a Super Bowl.
Right.
And I did see an interesting stat one time that said, and it obviously doesn't work out this way, but if you counted all buys as playoff wins, like it wasn't just for Peyton. But basically it was essentially like an adjusted playoff record for lots of people, because that would add a bunch to Brady as well. It's not. I'm not trying to make that argument right now. It's just Peyton Manning. Like it would change his record if you viewed every bye as like half a win. Because if you win half of those games, but whatever. It's an interesting game. Health for the Steelers is a major point, and can Peyton Manning get it done? Because if he plays like they were able to run the ball in that fourth quarter against the Chargers when he came in, but
not going to do that against Pittsburgh.
No, they're going to have to be able to pass the ball, which you should be able to do against Pittsburgh. So we're going to see. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to give it away, but I think we could be looking at Pittsburgh at New England. I really don't want Pittsburgh at Kansas City.
Steelers, Patriots.
Basically, I don't want the Steelers or Patriots to win the Super Bowl. That's basically what it comes down to. Any of the other teams that are left, I'm okay with.
All right, well, that wraps up things for us. Next Sunday, we'll be back with episode 198 on the 17th. We'll be talking these NFL divisional round games that we just mentioned. I don't know if it'll be in the afternoon or if it'll be in the evening. We'll post it on Facebook as soon as we know. If you want more from us, you can check us out at jmnjrradio.com or joemaysandjraff.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, like I mentioned earlier in the show, at jmnjr_radio, at joemaysandjraff, at jmflyer, FLYER 1454, and at Mr_Raffoff. Any shout-outs from you this week?
My dad's birthday is coming up this week. On Wednesday, the big 6-0.
Oh, big 6-0. So happy early birthday to Jeff.
That's it for me.
That's it? All right. Then thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 197th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.